Welcome to another FER podcast, the School of Feminism and Religion podcast. I'm Lana Bobic, and with us today, no less, is Teresa Forcades, with who I'm talking about feminism and theology today. Teresa, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
The Croatian public had the opportunity to meet you on several occasions. You were a guest at Falish, Zagreb Book Festival, the Philosophical Theater. There are a number of theological and cultural events and interviews through which the Croatian public had the opportunity to get to know you. Long story short, physician, Benedictine nun, and social activist, they call you the most radical nun in Europe. Do you consider yourself radical, to start with that?
Of course, in the sense of the root, right? Mm-hmm. So radical is as opposed to this idea that there is always the golden mean, which is the right path to follow. Well, I understand where it comes from and the spirituality behind it, I respect. But I like more the prophet type in the Bible that are very extreme. They are people that come out of the expectations. They are people that, well, I don't do that, but they shock society in the sense that they are able to question and to make people rethink what is it that we are doing, because our world, certainly, it needs to go upside down. It's not minor changes that we need. We need major changes. So in that sense, yes.
Radical root changes.
Yes. And how we live together, right? What is democracy? We use this word and then we all feel that we don't have a voice. That cannot go on like this.
So for the sake of the contest, let's grasp the problem of the identity positions, or dispositions, so to say. You identify yourself through many prisms of identity, but you will say you're radical, maybe you're a feminist, a nun, this and that. But you always remind that
the feminist part, you don't need to say maybe. It's like for
yes,
sure.
Of course, feminist. I'm just putting all the kind of identities that we can identify with. But you always remind us that the identities cannot be fixed. And this is something I find very important when you talk about identities. So maybe just to explain it a little bit, although it might seem very understandable, but
no, that's fine. I think it's important for me to do it because that's how I use the word queer. That word, I don't use it in the sense of non-normative sexuality, which of course it can be used, and that's maybe the origin of it. But I think in the origin, more than we are not as you expect us to be, the point is, let's make space in our society for each person to be a unique being, not to make categories that identify people, as you are saying now, with the labels. But that being said, which for me it's very important, I will give you an example that comes from Immanuel Kant in the Critique of the Pure Reason in the prologue. Kant talks about a dove that he says, the dove in its free flight believes or is convinced that without the air, it could fly quicker. So the dove thinks without the air, because of course, every time it moves the wings in trying to fly quicker, it finds what? Resistance. And of course, the logic is to think that the dove thinks, were this resistance not there, I could just fly quickly. But we know, without the resistance of the air, what would happen is the dove would just go directly. That's identity for me. So it's a resistance. It's something that it might feel that you are blocked to access some kind of universality that we all desire, but it is the means through which we are allowed to, in time and space, in the body. If you try, I think so. What does it mean for me to have directly a universal identity? I don't understand what that would mean for me, but I understand to have a femininity, for example, that it's non-essentialized. That's what it means for me to have this fixation that you say, right? I am a Catalan. I'm a proud Catalan. My country, I think it has beautiful history of fight. It has also disasters like any country, right? I identify with that, but not essential. That's not essential to me. It's my position in time and space. It's the resistance of the air that needs to be overcome eventually, but that now it's what allows me to fly. That would be my idea to express it in. And then there is another way that we can express the same idea, and this one comes from Plato, the philosopher, but via Simone Weil. Simone Weil speaks of this, what we call identity labels. She speaks about it saying it's like a wall that separates us. And you feel, okay, so let's get rid of the identities because it's a wall between us. But she says, it's like the wall of two prisoners that are in two cells next to each other. The wall separates, but the wall is also the means of communication. So they can tap the wall and they can then listen to who is the other person behind that wall, right? So this is, I think, a beautiful idea to acknowledge that we are in time and space and some limits apply, that it's not only the world of the ideas where we live. We live in the body, and the body needs certain, has necessities and has limits, right? So, oh no, I want to just get rid of that in the digital era. We'll all have a metaverse, and it's like, okay, go to the metaverse. But I don't think this is a way to fulfillment. And again, with Simone Weil, the resistance of the matter is the spiritual center of the world. The resistance of the matter. The matter, hence the body, is the spiritual center. There is no spirituality without the body. There is only alienation. And in the metaverse, we find alienation. Another thing is if you just enjoy yourself a little bit with a game, of course, that's not a problem. But to start thinking there is a future that goes through the mind, believing it's in a whatever landscape that has been created artificially, my goodness, then you disconnect the thing, you look around, and who is going to help you get back? Who is helping the teenagers get back to the normal life after they have been stimulated in a way that is programmed to excite them? They look around and they feel, this life I don't want to live. This is too boring. This is too gray. This is too uninteresting. Let me just die and go into a metaverse of full happiness or something.
Sounds like an illusion.
It sounds like an alienation, but it's a real one because I have read, right? There are problems with some teenagers and kids too, children. They do have problems in connecting. And even that, I remember once I read a report from post-traumatic stress syndrome from soldiers, I guess it was the Iraq War, and how seemingly in a paradoxical way, the soldiers that had been in combat on the ground had less PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, than the soldiers that were safely at home activating a computer and killing people through a computer because they activate robots, right? And they drop bombs with drones that nobody is piloting. It's like a drone that goes and drops the bomb, but you are at home. You have no risk whatsoever. How can that be? That your degree of post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, is more when you are in safety? That's fascinating for me. It's tremendous, but it's fascinating because it's again the body. You cannot live outside of your body if there is a disconnection. What you are doing with the mind, we are fighting. You're not fighting. You are just touching a computer and killing somebody. This is blood killing somebody. It's different if you are in the battlefield, even if you don't believe in battles or wars, but you are in the battlefield, somebody's out to kill you and you are out to kill the other person. There is something in our body that understands the real danger, and it helps you adjust. If you kill somebody defending you or your companions or your battalion, your land, your whatever, but not if you are in your sofa drinking soda and just pressing a button. Something in your humanity breaks when you do that.
Like alienated from your humanity in a way.
You really disconnect. And then you have dreams of people that you killed that you have never seen the faces, but you know you killed, right? You were happy because you said, oh, I dropped a bomb and I killed 5,000. Yeah, sure. And then you go to sleep and something happens, right? In you. I don't say everyone, but that was a report that the PTSD is worse among combatants that were not on the ground. And that has to do with this identity, this resistance, this matter, this taking seriously the body. We are now encountering each other digitally, right? Okay, well, we are getting used to that, but it's not the same, right?
But digitally, we also see how the discourse is much extremist, much polarizing. And we could philosophically and theologically go back to alienation of the body from the spirit, etc., which you just said we cannot do. So it's a really deep topic, but it's, I think, very important. I think alienation is one of the key topics today, since we do live in a very digitalized world where...
And I wanted to say, Lana, because we usually criticize all this alienation, and I do, of course, but here, my example with the PTSD, it's actually one of hope, in the sense that, listen, even if you try, you cannot discard your body. It comes back to you. So for me, this is hope, because all these transhumanist ideals that we are going to be like a software floating in some kind of cloud or something, yeah, sure. And then you go to bed and you see what happens, right? So there is something in us that is not like a blank slate that people can inscribe whatever they want. There is a lot to be said about this, whatever, trying to alienate human beings and all this culture of tyranny that we are in the midst of in the name of security. That's good. I mean, it's horrible, but I agree with that. But there is something like no tyranny in the world has lived forever. That's what I mean, the hope, right? There is something in the human spirit. The human spirit comes through, but then, okay, new tyranny comes. Okay, here we go again. I don't want to be like naive, but let's pay attention to this. How can that be? How many attempts have we had in the world of world domination from the empires of ancient times? It's always some kind of power that tries politically. I'm not talking only metaphysically or politically now. Somebody that tries to oppress and conquer the world. Okay, one after the other, and one after the other, they fall. And then a new one comes. Okay, but there has not been up to now, and we have many, many thousand years of history, the possibility of that, right? So it's my hope. It's like, I don't think it will never succeed, but we are there to should, in our time, day and age, just identify where these forces are acting and then try to oppose them.
Of course. And I will go back to identities.
Excuse me, Lana, oppose, or because I'm thinking now all the non-dualist thinkers will think, no, opposition. Okay. Good, this is biblical language, oppose. But how do you oppose it is not remaining at the same level, right? How you oppose it is like moving a bit above and then seeing the unity in all there is.
This was beautifully said, because opposing doesn't mean that if something is minus, you are plus, but that exactly. It's not the opposition. This, what you said, going up is beautiful.
This thinking that not opposing, for me, these evil forces means not forgetting that we are all together in this. All means all. Even the one that's now abusing, it's like, okay, I would put in prison or whatever. I'm not saying that. But at the core, at the heart, you don't let your heart be conquered by this violence. So that means that Jesus said, right? It's like love your enemy. It's the enemy. So that's why I talk about the opposition. You don't feel like everybody is my friend. Oh, really? No, everybody is not my friend. But everybody is potentially my friend. Everybody could be my friend. And even if they are never going to be my friend, I can still love. Mm-hmm. Really, not only to say it. No, really, my attitude is not one of wanting to destroy, that's our polarization you said today, right? It's again, the idea that it's a success if you can destroy the other person. That's horrible. That's antithetical to a spirituality. Spirituality, I am a Benedictine nun. The rule of Benedict, well, not the rule, actually the life of Benedict that the Pope Gregory I narrates in the 6th century, says that Benedict saw the whole world like collected in a ray of the sun. So a ray of the sun ray, and the whole world was inside. That's spirituality. You don't let this view be taken from you. You see everything in a ray of light. And then you just go on fighting or whatever needs to be done, but not losing the vision, because that's what it's meant by going against violence. You cannot do it with another violence.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very important message of the New Testament,
yes,
of Christianity. And I think this deconstruction of this binary understanding thing. So if I don't love my enemy, I hate him. No, I cannot, especially as a Christian. It is my duty to love every God's child. So this is maybe a good thing that Christianity and the New Testament gave us different words for love, because we do not love everyone the same, yet it is, I don't like the word duty. It's not the right word, but right now I cannot come with a better one. It is duty to love if you're...
I like that. I like that because it's like, again, Simone Weil, that I am studying since many years. She says our problem in politics is that we have, and this I will need to explain, but let me say first, she says the problem is that we have the basis of our constitution and our political constituency is to be a subject of rights. So our political identity in modernity and democracy is I am a subject of rights. And she says, well, that's problematic. And why it's problematic? It's first of all, because rights are derivative. Rights are not primary. Duties are. And why? Because I have the right to be respected by you, right? That's perfectly fine. But I don't have it. I don't have it. You have the obligation to respect me. You have it because it depends on you. But your respect doesn't depend on me. So what do I have when I have rights? I have nothing. It's like what people experience when they say, oh, the constitution of my country says I have a right to a decent living quarters. Oh, sure. How are the people, 3,000 people sleeping on the streets in Barcelona? What is their constitutional right to decent living? It's nothing. It's empty. It's like we say it, wet paper. We say in Catalan, paper mullat. This is wet paper. It counts for nothing. And then Hannah Arendt wrote, right, the right to have rights. If you have to write about the right to have rights, it means that there is a problem here, because if that's the basis,
don't have them.
If it's the basis of our political constituency and people can take it away because you have no citizenship, they take away your citizenship, or they just have to move from your country, you are a migrant, you arrive to another country, you have no right. So it means you never have them in a substantial way. You enjoy them if the other person fulfills his or her obligations. But you have nothing. You just are recipient, you are passive. And to have the basis of our political subjectivity, something so fragile, so not mine, so I'm a passive. It's like my political subjectivity, it's passive. I have, but the language is active, right? I have rights and you have nothing. Because, as I said, so the duties, just briefly, but to finish this, is the duties. Why does Simone Weil speak about duties? Because she says, my duties don't depend on anybody else. I can fulfill my duty, even if I were alone in the world, I would still have a duty to myself, to respect myself and every other creature. So the duties are in my hands. Even if I am in circumstances that, as you said, right, an enemy hurts me or hurts my family, right? Hurts my community, I still have a duty to respond in a loving way. And then I articulate that loving intelligently. So I might put the other person in prison, or I'm not saying you just have to let violence to go on without opposing it, but you can oppose it in a peaceful way. You can do many things, but you have a duty that the other person will never take away from you, your duty. Now you have something. That's a solid beginning, right? And to finish this is very important to distinguish Simone Weil from some conservative thinkers that would enjoy to hear the language of duties, but they mean duty to the state or duty to the authority. That's not what Simone Weil means. It's not duties to the state or to the authority. It's duty to whom? To another human being. Because as Levinas would say, the face of the other person tells me, do not kill. The face, the other person has a face and I have a face. So that face speaks to me, even with no words. And it tells me two things, according to Levinas. Do not kill me and do not leave me alone in my mortality. That's the duty that Simone Weil is talking about. Not to let anyone go hungry if you have enough and the person is next to you hungry and you have enough. So you share. You share. It's not you call the 003 so that the functionary people, bureaucracy come and take that person. And we have lost this, and there is no democracy without this direct commitment. To my grandmother, I still remember, she would every day come out of their home in the midst of Barcelona, a big metropolis, and clean the street in front of her house. And the other women did it, right? No men at that time. Women would clean the piece of street that was in front of their entrance door. I love it. This is democracy. The public space is our responsibility. Like that.
And community, because democracy should be built on community. And I think it's so important to talk about duty, because I think that it doesn't allow us to alienate.
Yes.
This is the pet. And as you have been speaking, I was inspired to think about, like, today we talk a lot about the right on free speech. And I think that this is a perfect example of what you are talking. Like, I have a right to free speech, but what's your duty behind it? And is free speech a right with no consequences, with no ending? Or does it end when the hate speech starts? So
here Simone Weil is also very helpful, because she is giving us, when she says a duty towards the other person, she means that you have to take the needs of human beings should be the basis of the Constitution, according to her, right? The needs. So the hunger, the everything. So, and then she speaks about physical needs, like hunger, the need to be prevented from violence, to be taken care when you are sick, to have heating, to have clothes, to have drink and food. But then she says there are spiritual needs as well that should be taken into account in the Constitution. And she says, how can I distinguish spiritual needs from whims or capricious things, right? Or desires? And she has an answer. She says, the answer is that the needs are always limited. The desires are not. So, for example, free speech, she says, this is a need, but it's limited by the truth. So we have a need to truth. We have a need. It's a spiritual human need, all of us. And we all have a need to have a free opinion and free speech. So both of them, they kind of balance each other. And the same, she says, and that's very interesting, for private property. She thinks, yes, we need private property. We need to have the clothes that we wear, that it's not somebody else that can take them or say, no, now you're going to dress pink today. Like, wait a minute, I'm deciding what I'm wearing. It's my clothes, right? My home. She actually, it's very bourgeois in that, and me too, that every person should own the home. And a little bit of land, even if it's 2 meters, to put your chair under the sun and to cultivate a couple of tomatoes. Of course, that's human. That is very important. And so your means of transportation, you can have a bike or a horse in that time. And then your means of work, that's Marx here now. You don't sell your work capacity. You cooperate with others. And so you remain owner of what is your means of productivity and work. So this is private property. But Simone Weil says the human soul needs collective property as well. So we need to have a park that is our park. We need to have even a palace if you want to have a palace. I don't like monarchy, but a place that looks like palace or a temple or a church, which is ours, not only mine, because we are beings that are fulfilled only in community. So we need to represent that with the famous commons that capitalism has taken away, right? So this is our woods, the waters, our pathway is not somebody that makes me pay every time I need to use the road. What is this? It's our roads, it's our woods, it's our beach. In some places, they privatize the beach. All constitutions would have it, no, you cannot privatize the coastline of a country because it's our common property. The electromagnetic, collectively, we cannot because our security depends on that and so many things. So, yes.
The idea of communal good is getting lost, and it is again the question of duties and rights. Yes, do you have a right to private property? Yes. Can something communal in its essence, something, if you want to talk theologically, made by God for everyone, be private? No, it shouldn't. It should never. It's the basis for our healthy communities. And maybe the reasons why we don't have healthy community is because we sell things that are ours.
That should never be.
Someone.
Yes. And even the private property that Simone Weil, and of course the gospel, right, would say there is never an absolute claim. And Weil, again, I'm commenting her now, it's saying, well, you should have a right of ownership, not because you have a paper that somebody says, I am the owner. So what? That shouldn't be the way, or you have money to buy it. That shouldn't be the way. He says private property should be used property. So if you have a home, that you should have the right of property. If you have all these things I've said, but she says a gardener who's taking care of a garden, and then it's caring for a tree and the tree is growing and you just give all your work and love and sweat to that tree, and then comes the owner who is not the right owner because it has never worked with that tree and says, cut it. That's damage to the soul of that gardener. So the property, the ownership is the gardener because he's taking care of the tree. So we should change our notion of private property. And the gardener should have private property in the sense that you, who have never sweated over that tree, cannot go and say, cut it. This is damaging to the human soul. So the gardener, because he takes care of that, he is the owner. And these papers we should not consider as absolutes. That's the idea that of a new way of imagining the human community.
If I would have to copyright what you just said, I would definitely say we need a community of care, not a community of free trade. Of course, trade has free, but the care for the community underneath it all, in a way. Let me go back to, I will go back to feminism and identities again, because I think it is intervened somewhere when we talk about alienation, etc. We had a conversation, this was a feminist group, and we had a conversation, and then I said, I wish to wake up in a world where I don't need my feminist identity anymore. And then everyone was a bit shocked, but then when we thought about it, it's like, yes, we do want a world with this identity categories that we use today, but we are not there yet. So it's, I think, a goal, but we're not there. And I think that identities in this way are, you said you had various, we all have various identities, and it's important that they're not fixed, that they're not actually outside identities that we take as an armor, so to say. But I'm also interested is, can we achieve our spiritual growth, or can we achieve peace within ourselves if we don't integrate all our identities and actually have this, I'm not sure if it's okay to say privilege, but maybe privilege to explore all of our identities outside of what someone told us we are or we should be.
I do think that maybe the word fixed that we've used, I before said de-essentialized, and that I like it better because for an identity to even have sense to be called like this, it needs to have a continuity. in the time, because otherwise it's like something that you use in a, let's say, utilitarian way, right? Oh, I'm a Catalan, my country, but this is only if it serves me. If not, I don't care about the destiny of my people. That's not it, right? I'm a feminist because whatever, it serves me. Otherwise, what is the commitment? What is the duty that we said before? What is the... So let me express it like this. The identities, I understand, they have a continuity, so they look fixed, but when I say de-essentialize, it means how you conceive of them. It's not what gives you your human basis, and hence it opposes you to those who have different identities, but it is on the contrary, it's this wall that communicates you with the prisoner next door. So you have a country, I have a country, so that's fine. That's what's important, is that both. So what it unites us, what seemingly separates us, because you're Croatian, I'm Catalan, it unites us because you have a country, I have a country, so we are the same. It doesn't matter if your country, I mean, you have to know the cities of your country. I know the cities of my country. You have to love and know your history, because I cannot know the history of everybody. That's what I meant by the limit, right? But you cannot see you as different because I have a different nationality. It's the other way. It's metahü is the word that comes from Plato, from the symposia, from the diotima, the symposia on love. Because diotima says there is heaven, there is earth, and in between, there is love, eros. And that's what unites heaven and earth. It's not imposition, it's not power, it's love, that it's able to connect. And that's the same, right? You cannot take the veil of this metahü, which is in betweenness. You cannot just take it away and get to the thing, because that's not how human life works. You have to, like the fly, the dove, right? But if you have this sensitivity, that's what unites us, even more than separates us. This is, I think, the right way. And of course, it excludes all type of xenophobia or of chauvinism, I wanted to say, right? It's like, my country is better. It's like, where does it come from? This is ridiculous to think. On the contrary, you might think my country, probably it might be the worst, because it's the one you know the best. So you know all the indecencies, you know all the bad history, you know all the details of how corrupt a country can be. So it's not that you love it because it's the best. If anything, it might be you love it because it's yours. You just happen to be born there, and you want to give back what has been given to you, which is a language, a soil to grow, right? And just to finish that thought, because I'm quoting a lot Simone Weil, and that's fine, I don't do all the time, but this time I have her ideas now in my head, and in that I think they are relevant. She says, an individual can give her or his life for his country, but not in the sense that he or she thinks the country is above the individual. She's very careful with totalitarianism, right? A collective is never above an individual. And yet, why the individual can be requested or can freely give the life for the collective, right? That doesn't make sense. That she says, well, it can give the life in the same way that a farmer can give the life for a field of corn. The farmer will never think the field of corn is more than me or more than a human being, but the field of corn is the means to feed many human beings. So I give my life for the field of corn, but I know all along it's a field of corn, and I'm a human being. So there must be no confusion there. And a country, if it works properly, it's, as we know from colonialism, right? You just deprive people from their roots, their language, their customs, their dresses, everything, and you just have an uprooted human being. And colonialism is been guilty of that many times over. So you know that what we call a country, nationality, whatever, I don't speak nation state as such, but what it means to have a community, political community of reference, this is needed for the soul. So it's because of that you might be able to even give your life for that. But
I feel like we're constantly actually on the topic of this oppositions, of this problem of binarity, dualism. It's put like it's either this or that. Even when we talk about individuality or communality in these postmodern times, it's always either individuality or communality or collectivity, when it should actually, if you ask me, if someone would ask me and no one asks me, but it should be both.
Yes.
You know? And this is something that's very important. And I will go back to...
Exactly. You understood me perfectly with this meta-hu, this in-between.
Yes.
In-between. That's
exactly. I read
exactly.
Plato, so... and Simone Weil, of course. But this is what I also can... I can address the question of your... let's say feminism, especially feminism in church, which I find it so inspiring when, like, when I say I'm a feminist, people say, oh, but how can you be a believer? How can you be a Christian? Because they see this is something in opposition. And then when I heard you talking or read some interviews that you did, it was so important for me how you actually state this, like, yes, I am a feminist. We do need to call out the patriarchy and misogyny of the church structures, yes. But in the same time, we also have to say that the church also had this role of preserving women's voices through history. So it was not only, it was excluding women to one extent, but on the other, we have a strong feminist tradition and strong female voices in the church. And this was so important for me because it showcases how it's not either this or that, but it's actually both.
And this is so clear for me, Lana, because example I probably gave in the interview or the occasion you heard me, I'll give it again because it's the truth. It's how it has been, right? For me, as being a physician, I learned about the DNA. Okay, DNA is what's called the model of Watson and Crick. Watson is James Watson and Francis Crick. So two men that I thought I learned in school, and I had to give my test and say, yes, they did invent it, they created, they discovered, let's say they discovered the structure of our DNA. That's a very important thing, right, in science. So it's called after these two men, the name. It's the model, Watson and Crick. Okay, good. Until I finished my medical school in 1990. It was not until 2005 or something that in my feminist studies, I just discovered who Rosalind Franklin was. Franklin, I've never heard about you. Where were you all this time? Okay, she died at 39 from ovarian cancer. And then when they got the Nobel Prize, she was the one who started this double helix. She was the one who did the first crystallography. She was the one that had the genius idea that sometimes in science you need to have to open up a new path and think, what about if that was on spiral? Spiral, our DNA, our genetic material, in this linear, straight kind of thinking. It's no, you have to have it all geometrical. Spiral, it's like a dance. That's our genetic material. It's dancing around itself like this. That was a woman who had the first idea, but not only the idea as I am expressing now in poetic terms. No, she was a scientist and she did all the experiments that were then made possible that these other scientists follow suit. But she died around 1950 or 50 years later. I'm finishing my medical school and she's forgotten, absolutely forgotten, if not for the feminist. Okay, so of course I compare that with Teresa of Avila, with Clara from Assisi, with Hildegard from Bingen, from Brigitte from Sweden, from Tekla, from hundreds of women who lived in the past and are not forgotten, because there is an institution which is misogynist in its structure because it doesn't allow women to access the making decision positions. So it is misogynist, and I don't like this, and I hope I can contribute to change it. But at the same time, it's preserving not only the memory. We know Hildegard lived. Okay, that's good enough. I mean, not enough. That's good in itself. But no, we don't know that she lived. We know what she wrote. We have these documents preserved, and we know what she did. She started a monastery, and the monastery is still going. Like in this case, 800 years later, or almost 1,000 years later. This we need to really meditate on, because, and here it's my ignorance and my question that I always pose openly in case somebody wants to really, I'm not ironic, illustrate me on that. Where are the Chinese women of the 12th century? I am sure they were there. Of course they were there. It's not only one culture that has women who think independently, who do social things, and who make an impact, right? But maybe in another culture, there is not an institution which preserves the memory. I'm saying really, as I said, not ironically and not chauvinistically, I would be thrilled and happy to know, yes, there is such an institution and it's called so-and-so. But in case there is not, and I am to the moment ignorant whether there is another one, well, that makes me have a respect for this institution that still I want to change in the misogyny, and still that has not, on the contrary, has even motivated me more. But this made me an impression when I reflected on it, because just 2 days ago, I was listening to a radio program, feminist radio program in the Catalan radio, public radio, who talked about the women pilots, war pilots that were really piloting the planes in the Second World War, and they were very important in Germany and in Catalonia and in Russia, and all this history, they were after the war. During the war, everybody is like allowing women to do things that are not feminine because it's a war. After the war, they are forbidden, they are forgotten, their license is taken away, and they are forgotten. So we women have not preserved this memory. And now, because this feminist consciousness has recovered some of them and somebody is studying them, but in the society, we honor the people who fought and did all kinds of things, but the women are forgotten. So this is very important, that I'm speaking about the Catholic Church, we have not one or two, plenty of feminine models or women models to inspire us. And they inspire not only the women, but they inspire the men. How many men read and reread Teresa from Avila and think she is the inspiration of their life? She was already inspiration for John of the Cross and for all the Carmelites that follow her. Actually, John of the Cross was punished, among other things, because he followed the woman. Like, you cannot declare yourself a follower of Teresa. You are the priest, she is the nun, so the hierarchy has to go the other way. And he said, well, she's inspiring me and I'm just following her reform. So this is very, very important, and I'm very happy that you brought it up.
It is kind of a question of education and re-education all the time, discovering women, etc. So since we're coming to an end of this conversation, unfortunately, I will use it to ask you something that I find really important, and that is the role of education. Is the education one of the paths or one part of the path to a more just world? And in that context, you run the Sinclassica Escola Monastica, a school that's quite different in terms of its location, content, working principles. So if we could wrap up the conversation with your thoughts on the school and on the education as a powerful tool.
I was fortunate, Lana, that I did, I sometimes have explained that I come from a non-religious family, so I was not raised with a religious consciousness, although I had been baptized and did my first communion, but it was not until I was 15 that I read the Gospels for the first time and had a strong reaction of being upset, because I thought, I've lost 15 years of my life. Nobody has explained to me that such a God existed. That was my reaction. So my parents were, But now why I said it is because I was fortunate to go to school as a child, since I was 10, and then 10 to 14 was that, which was, maybe some people would call it experimental school, but it was an assembly with assemblies school. It was a school run by a director and a group of professors that he had enrolled, that was very, very, had a vision completely in sync with what to the day I am still thinking, right? So it means it had this idea that in the school, the hierarchy is not what's important. The professor still has a role, of course, but it's to instill to the students always a greater responsibility for the common good. These values, also the value of the body. We were doing then these gymnastics where we were told to be like a seed, and then the music would start sounding, and then you had to start at your own pace, start opening up and see what kind of tree you become or plant or something, but you were a seed. When you do this and you are a child, this remains with you. And then they were asking us to look at the toes of our feet and then see the toes are disappearing because we are not using them, and some people can paint with the toes, things like this, right? That has to do with art and music, and has to do, it was not a Waldorf school, but I know there are other Montessori, Waldorf, other systems. I think education is very important, and that children, we are so open when we are children, and then we can just learn things that remain with you all your life. Then I have become an active Christian. This director was not a Christian, but then later he became, when he was old, he contacted me and said, hey, I was the director, and that was a joy. He died last year. So yes, the education, I think it's key, and it's always worth it to put all the effort into that. So what I found that 6 years ago is not for children, but it is, as you said, a monastic school, and the name is Syncletica, and Syncletica is the name of a woman who lived in the 4th century, and I wanted to honor her because she's one of the so-called mothers of the desert. Sometimes we say the fathers of the desert, and those are men who, when Christianity became official in the Roman Empire, they could see how people were becoming Christians to have a social advantage, and they thought, that's not it, right? We were risking our lives to be Christian. That should be something not giving you a social advantage. So they moved away, fuga mundi, to the desert. And everybody talks about the men who did that, but there were women too, right? And there are 3 women that I know of, 3 of which we not only know the name, but know the teachings, what they were teaching. And these 3 women are Amma, because the men are called Abba, like father, and the women are called Amma, like mother. So Amma Sara, Amma Theodora, and Amma Syncletica. And so I wanted to honor her, and also because her name is interesting for a school, because Syncletos, a prefix, and then the lexema, the root. And maybe those who listen to the podcast will be familiar with the word parakletos. Paraklet is in the Gospels, it's a name that Jesus gives to the Holy Spirit. It's paraklet. Kletos, parakletos. And kletos means actually convened, like called, in the sense of you convene an assembly, you convene a reunion. So parakletos is somebody that's convened, called, para, next to you, to your side. It's your lawyer, right? This is the lawyer. The Holy Spirit will always favor you, so that it's your best expression. So parakletos is convened, para, next to me. In synkletos is convened together. So that's the school, right? We are convened together, hopefully to let the parakletos be our inspiration. And then what I can do, Lana, is if any of your listeners from the podcast or you yourself would like to know what we do, because we do it in English, I'll say it very briefly, but I can invite you for a weekend online, because it's a school that's run on site and online. So I didn't want to do something only online for the reasons I've explained before, right? The matter, the time and space, only online school, not for me. But of course, I wanted it to be open to people who cannot come to Puplet, etc. So we do what's called hybrid. So it's always on site, but people can connect online and see what we do there. And it's in English. And what we do is 2-year program. But as I said, you can participate only on 1 weekend, and that's in itself fulfilling, because the topics are follow a spiritual growth. It's like a spiritual journey. So you start with know yourself, then comes love, then comes grace, then comes humility, then silence, then word, then community, then forgiveness, then fulfillment. But with fulfillment we don't finish, because in this earth, this is the first year. But then why we need the second year if we arrive to fulfillment the first year? Is because there is no fulfillment in time and space that's forever, right? It just feels the shift of the fulfillment, and then you have to go to suffering, which is the first topic of the second year, which corresponds to know yourself. Because how do you know yourself? When you find your limits, and then you move, let's say, the same topics of the first year, but with another name that deepens it. The second of the first year was love. The second of the second year is freedom, and so on. And the last one of the 2-year program, which corresponds to fulfillment, how you deepen fulfillment. Okay, the last topic of our 2-year program is solitude. It's this inner desert where you have to have a cell or have a place that you can go, and you know that not even God can come there in those moments where you just re-emerge to know yourself again anew and all this. So as I said, it's once a month, and it has eight let's say, lectures every module, and those are always from the very same perspectives, which are literature, fine arts, music, science, philosophy, politics, Bible, and theology. So each of these topics, I have said, know yourself, love, etc., has 8 professors speaking about it from these 8 different perspectives, but not speaking about it theoretically, but speaking about it in the sense that I asked the professor, if you were to come as a professor, Lana, I would ask you, okay, theology, for example, do you have a pearl about our next topic? This weekend we have a session, and the topic is truth. And the professor of literature has to bring a pearl, the professor of fine arts, a pearl, the professor. What is a pearl? 2 characteristics. The pearl needs to be embodied, again, this idea. It needs to be concrete. So I don't want the professor of literature to say, okay, truth in literature means in a theoretical way. No, that is not interesting for us. The professor of literature has to bring a poem or a novel or the chapter of a novel and say, okay, from this poem, I have learned something about truth. Now we are going to listen. It has to be embodied knowledge. So the pearl is, 1, concrete, and 2, because it could be a false pearl, to be an authentic pearl, you have to, in your subjectivity as a professor, you have to have learned something about the topic from the pearl. Otherwise, it's a false pearl you are bringing. Oh, the Divine Comedy of Dante. Yeah, okay, I don't care. Have you learned something from it on the topic? If you have not learned, don't lecture about it, because it will be boring and theoretical. If you have learned something about truth, really learn. Now I'm going to listen to you, because this is alive, and that's the school. And I mean it, that if you or anybody that listens to your podcast wants to join for a weekend, normally there is a fee, but this would be an opportunity to learn about what we do, not only theoretically, but in the practice.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation, and I hope listening to you will evoke something very important for other people, as it is for me, that learning process is not only about rationality, it is about emotions, it is about spirituality, it is about letting the space for the Holy Spirit as well. Teresa, thank you, and hope I'll have opportunity to speak to you again.
Thank you, Lana. God bless you.